Hi friends, it's Grace and welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be doing a combination book haul and book unhaul. So I'm gonna do the book haul first since that's the positive part of the video and there's some books that I'm really excited about. And then I'm going to be talking about some books that ultimately I have decided that I will be parting ways with, and I will tell you why. So without further ado, let's get into the books that I have acquired. And I'm going to start with the most exciting one. So this is a Harper Muse painted edition of Little Women that I absolutely fell in love with because of how beautiful it is, and it was basically the same price as a normal hardcover book. Did I need this? No. Like, I already have a copy of Little Women, but I'm a sucker for beautiful books. It has all of these gorgeous illustrations on it. Like, obviously this is in the style of a painting, which is what these painted classics are going for. But this is gorgeous. Like, not only do I love the colors, but it has these gilded edges. It also has this like red ribbon bookmark, and there are some special pages within the actual book itself. Even the normal pages are pretty like well set in the typeface and stuff. Like, it looks a little bit fancier, but there are some pages set in here with like quotes with art on the back of them as well. And this is just a beautiful book, and it's a book that I love. I do adore Little Women. I would love to reread it. I'm not 100% sure if I would actually reread from this copy since I want to keep it nice. However, yeah, when I saw these in the store and I determined like which ones they actually had, I went with this one just because I do love Little Women so much, and it's just really, really cool. Now, this haul of books is not super big, but it is mostly fantasy. The other non-fantasy book that's a part of this haul is Watch Over Me by Nina LaCour, and this is a book about a girl who ages out of the foster system, and so she is basically offered the opportunity to go live on this like farm or ranch, where like she will be taken care of and she will be safe. But if like teenagers, I guess they're not children, but like if they go to live here, they accept that they are going to live with ghosts. And so that's basically all I know about it, but I know that it comes highly recommended and it sounds very kind of like eerie and emotional and interesting. And so it's actually quite a short book. And so I picked this one up at the same time as I picked up a couple of these other books. The other two books that I picked up in that same purchase were the final two books in the Chorus of Dragons by Jen Lyons, and that's because these were on sale in hardcover. So I have only paid, I believe, full price for one of these books. Even then, I think it was still a little bit on sale, which is fantastic. I don't know why there are such good deals everywhere on these. They probably are in a situation where the series itself like deserves more recognition, and maybe this first printing of it, like obviously it has its dedicated fans, but maybe it's just not widely recognized enough to have been like printed again and to be in high demand. I'm really not sure. However, I've been super lucky to pick these up at great prices so far, and so I've completed the series. I did wait until I was finished with book 2 to purchase these. After reading 2 of the books, I was pretty convinced on my feelings, my like strong positive feelings on the series, so I decided to go ahead and pick up the rest of it. And then, funnily enough, the final 2 books in this haul, although they are from different series, they are also from the same author. So the first of those is The Empire of Gold by S.A. Chakraborty, which is the final book in the Daevabad trilogy. And so after my strong feelings of City of Brass, I just posted my wrap-up in which I talked about it, and I also posted my dedicated Reading Booktubers favorite books about City of Brass. I went and bought this after, same situation, after I had read the first book. I knew that I would want the complete trilogy on my shelves because I am gonna finish it. I know I will. So I wanted to be a little bit proactive because hopefully within the next like 2 months I will be reading this book. But you know how TBRs always go off the rails. But regardless, I wanted to own it because I knew that I was liking it, and that's kind of like the reason that I ended up buying it. And then finally, the book that I mentioned in my most anticipated releases for this year is The Adventures of Amina al-Sarafi by, of course, S.A. Chakraborty, or Shannon Chakraborty as she is going by on this book. So this is also the beginning of a new series. I don't entirely know how many books this is gonna be. It has a gorgeous cover. I love the artwork on here. That is like half of what was attention catching for me with this book, because at the time when this was announced, I hadn't read City of Brass and I had no experience with S.A. Chakraborty, so I thought this looked cool regardless. And then once I had actually read one of her books and really enjoyed it, this became one of my most anticipated releases, instead of just being something on my radar that I was interested in. Definitely like leveled up in interest once I realized that I liked her writing and her style. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. However, I do believe that I'm going to finish the David Bad trilogy first, just because like maybe it's the completionist in me, but I don't want to start on one of her other works while I'm in the middle of a series that I'm already enjoying. Now, usually I will wait a little bit longer to do a book haul to have more books than that in the haul. However, I thought that since I'm also going to do a small unhaul, it would be fine to combine these. So that is it for the books that I have acquired, and now we're going to move into a few of the books that I will be finding a way to rehome in some way or another. There are a fair few little free libraries in my neighborhood, so I'll probably be taking some of these books to those. Maybe I will take some of them to Value Village, we'll see. I could try selling them myself, but I don't know if I want to do that. I haven't decided. I don't know that it's worth the hassle. And if I can just give them away and then someone else can enjoy them, then that might just be the better course. Okay, so first book that I am unhauling is King of Scars by Leigh Bardugo. So I actually still plan to read the original, oh my gosh, what is it even called? Shadow and Bone trilogy. So I originally entered the Grishaverse by reading Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom. I was told at the time that you can read those independently of the other series, and that is certainly true, even though it's also probably true that I didn't and still don't have like wider context for the world that you get in the Shadow and Bone trilogy, but that was fine. I greatly enjoyed Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom, that duology. I loved it. It's been a while now. I read it in like 2017 and I have not revisited it. However, I did love it. This, on the other hand, I picked up afterwards, and I think that there's a stronger connection between this book and the other trilogy. And so at the time, I think that I had much less understanding of what was going on here, even though I still had a little bit, but also I didn't think that this book was like all that good. And I don't have, like, I have confusing memories of it, I think, above all else. And maybe that is my own fault for reading this before I read the other trilogy, but I've heard a lot of people be disappointed by like King of Scars and Rule of Wolves. And so after hearing like others who have actually read all the books talk about these, I don't ever plan to read Rule of Wolves. And I don't ever plan to reread this, even though I do plan to read the original trilogy. So I think I can safely part ways with this and feel basically no loss about it. So that is my plan. Next up, we have a book that was actually gifted to me, but it was like sort of a joke gift. It was from my friend Mallory from Mississippi. And so this book is called Canada, which she purchased for me because of course I am Canadian. I mean, I'm sure she purchased it for me with the like intent that I would enjoy it, whatever it is. But this was definitely like kind of a joke. And so this is a historical fiction book that takes place in, I believe it was the 1960s. But regardless, this is basically a story about a 15-year-old boy whose parents commit a bank robbery, and then in order for him to be not taken into custody when they are like arrested and imprisoned, he is illegally spirited away into Canada. And I actually thought the beginning of this was pretty interesting. However, Richard Ford's writing is pretty dense, and then like maybe from the 25 or 30% like way of the book onward, it's very dry and like not much happens. Like, it was an interesting experience to say the least, and I actually thought that his writing itself was quite good, but the story was just not it for me. It was basically like he's living in this nothing town in the middle of rural Western Canada where nothing happens. And like, he goes through some emotional growth, but even then I didn't feel like this had a coherent through line, and like even now talking about it, I barely remember like what it was about or what happened. And so suffice it to say, like, it wasn't my favorite. It wasn't a bad book, but it just, I know I'm never gonna reread it, and I don't feel strongly about like having it on my shelves or in my collection. And so I don't know, it's gotta go. I'm sorry, Mallory. I love you so very much, but I am, however, going to take the sticky note out of the front with Mallory's sweet Merry Christmas message on it, because I don't want to get rid of that. Okay, next up we have a book that I have very strange and mixed feelings about, and I'm not sure quite how to articulate them properly, but I'm going to do my best. So that is The Tattooist of Auschwitz by Heather Morris, and this is a novel, but I think the reason that I feel so strangely about it is because from what I could understand back when I researched the book after I finished it, Heather Morris wrote this about a person that actually existed based on interviews that she conducted with that person. So while this might be like filled in with events to make a cohesive narrative and to make it into like a fictional storyline, at the same time as that, I get the sense that the author didn't want to take any creative liberties with the characters' like internal thoughts, emotions, and feelings. Like, she didn't want to impose those things on the real people that this was about. And I do understand that. Like, I understand that there's a very good intention behind doing that. And it's not that I think that that course of action was the wrong thing, but in a sense, I think it was the wrong thing for like trying to write this as a novel, because the thing was, like, I was expecting this to be a fictional story about fictional characters, but the characters felt completely flat and one-dimensional, and they, like, it sounds absolutely unhinged to say this, but despite the fact that we were like living their experience with them in Auschwitz, they were not inspiring emotion, because there just was no like depth. Like, it was like hearing a story third hand, where there's no, it was very much like, this is what happened. Like, when it was being described how he fell in love with his wife, there wasn't any like internal depth to the thoughts, and that's the best way that I can describe how I felt throughout this whole book. And so despite feeling honestly very guilty about it, because I'm like, how can I not be empathizing with these like prisoners of Auschwitz, it was just a very strange way of telling the story where there was no internal depth in the character's point of view. And I think that that is the reason why, is because Heather Morris didn't want to make up thoughts and feelings for these real people. And I understand that, but it just didn't work for me as a fictional story. Like, I think that if this was written like as an interview or as like the account of a real person, it would have been way more effective for me personally. So I hope that that doesn't sound completely insane of me, because that's just how I remember feeling about this. Okay, so next up we have a book that I read back in 2019 that I definitely purchased like on a whim at the bookstore back when I was not like aware of the book internet, like I wasn't getting my recommendations from there. This was a genuine like go to the bookstore, think that the book has a cool cover, and like pick it up. So this is The Book of Hidden Things by Francesco Dimitri. And so this is about a group of 4 friends who every single year they meet up, they take a trip together. But this time, like, one of them, who's kind of like the glue that holds their group together, does not show up for their yearly trip, so they're worried about him. They learn that he's up to some activities that make him seem like he's kind of gone off the deep end, and they're worried, like he seems kind of crazy. And then they find this. So I remember a lot of details about the ending of this book, but I don't necessarily remember the whole book. But basically, they find this like manuscript that their friend has written about like dark magics and like hidden arts, and it's called the Book of Hidden Things. And I thought this sounded kind of like whimsical and magical and enchanting, like when I read the description of the book. This book is absolutely unhinged. Like, I'm not gonna go ahead and spoil the book, but by the end of this, I was like, this is some of the most screwed up shit I have ever read in my entire life. And I mean, I'll give him credit for the fact that like it was well written and it had an impact, but holy Jesus, I don't even know what to think or what to say, and I can't really explain why I've been hanging on to this book the whole time. I think for the most part it just has flown under the radar, but I know that I'm never gonna reread it. The one positive thing I can say about it though is that I know I will also never forget what happens at the end of this book. It's very vivid. So it is what it is. I'm never gonna reread it. I don't know, should I subject some unsuspecting person to this book, like in a little free library? Maybe. Next up on the unhaul list is The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, and I actually quite like this cover. I think this is a really pretty book, so it kind of like is unfortunate that I want to part with it, but back when I first read this, I liked it. I didn't feel strongly about it either way. Like, I just thought that it was, I guess, kind of interesting. But it's funny, the more I read about people's opinions of this book, the more I realize that, like, in hindsight, it is kind of, like, fluffy, I guess. Like, it's supposed to be this kind of deep and meaningful book, and I feel like it's really just a story, and like it's not that memorable to me the way that it probably is for people who actually love it, and I have no interest whatsoever in rereading this, so that's kind of the main reason. Like, I don't hate this or anything. I know that people think that it's like super overrated and that type of thing. I don't even remember enough about this to say that I could feel negatively about it, but I just don't care, so it can go. Okay. The last three are all little guys, so we'll go through them kind of quickly. So the first one is Journey to the Center of the Earth by Jules Verne, and I don't regret reading this at all. This is a classic that I feel like I was always kind of aware of, and I thought that it would be interesting, but parts of it were interesting. But for the most part, I just kind of found this boring and a slog, and it took me, I think, 3 tries to actually read this, and like based on the fact that this book is only like 190 pages long, I feel like it really shouldn't have been that difficult. Like, I'm never gonna read it again. I don't want to put myself through that again. I think that I was hoping for more. Like, I was hoping for this to culminate in more. And it just didn't. So like, after all the effort that it took and the fact that I felt very ambivalent, I'm like, okay, I don't need to keep this book, you can go. Next up, we have The 5 People You Meet in Heaven by Mitch Albom, and to be honest with you, I'm not sure what drove me to buy this book in the first place, because I am not a religious person. I just don't, I don't know what made me buy it. Like, let's be honest. I think because it was popular and I had heard the name before, and once again, this was before BookTube or anything where I was getting like kind of specific recommendations to my tastes. I just went to the bookstore and thought, yeah, okay, like that is something I've heard of, let's try it out. And like, I did think this was good at the time, but the value in it for me was less about any sort of profound like religious meaning that's meant to be found in the story, and more about the relationships that you have with people and the emotional side of things. And like, I did enjoy those aspects of it, and I thought that it was well written, but again, like, no strong feelings that linger to this point. Like, I can never see myself rereading it, And I do know that this is popular, so maybe if I put it in a little free library, somebody else will be happy to find it. And that's the best that I can hope for, because if they want it, then they want it more than me, and they should have it. Finally, we have the Chrysalis by John Wyndham, but even looking at this now, I'm reconsidering my decision and I'm unsure whether I'm actually gonna unhaul this or not. I guess I'll decide at a later time, but this is like kind of classic sci-fi, and it is very interesting because it's about this group of young people who have this like mutation that allows them to kind of read each other's minds. And I think that this is actually a pretty interesting story looking back on it, but now I'm thinking that it's better in hindsight than the actual reading experience was, if that makes sense. Like, reading this, don't get me wrong, it still was interesting, but I don't think it was super like engaging. It was something that, because it was so short, I was just getting through it. Like, this is once again like about 190 pages, and I think it was the writing style and the little bit like denser and older type of writing style that made this like, if this was told in a modern sense, I think it would probably appeal to me more. And so maybe that's why, looking back on it, when I think about the concepts and everything, I think about that this was actually like, this was pretty good. So you know what, I remain having mixed feelings, and maybe I will just decide later, because it's also kind of cool looking book. We'll see. Well, I'm sorry to end the video on such an unsure note, but those are the books that I am planning to unhaul, and that is basically it for this one, because I talked about the books that I have acquired recently that I'm really excited about, and then of course there's some books that have been on my shelves for a long time that, by the fact that this much time has passed, I think I've decided what to do with them. So yeah, that is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Click like if you liked it, click subscribe if you'd like to see more content from me. I post new videos on most Mondays and Thursdays, and as always, I will have my joint Discord with Ben and socials linked in the description if you're interested in any of that stuff. And with that said, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. Bye!